just very disturbing. And even just from like just hearing like what sounds like radio play of a voice put into some weird warp loop, I don't even know how to explain it. You can tell it's a voice, but like you can't hear anything at all that's being said. It's literally like I'm hearing a ghost. So this is the first part where the disembodied voice comes in, sets the tone. Verse 2, one needs to have a plan. Someone said who was turned away into the shadows, and who I believed was sleeping or dead. Imagine. He said, all the flesh that is eaten, the teeth tearing into it, the tongue tasting its savor, and the hunger for that taste. Now take away that flesh, and said, take away the teeth and the tongue, the taste and the hunger. Take away everything as it is. That was my plan, my own special plan for this world. I listened to these words, and yet I did not wonder if this creature whom I had thought sleeping or dead would ever approach his vision, even in his deepest dreams, or his most lasting death, because I had heard of such plans, such visions, and I knew they did not see far enough. But what was demanded in a way of a plan needed to go beyond tongue and teeth and hunger and flesh, beyond the bones and the very dust of bones, and the wind that would come to blow the dust away. And so I began to envision a darkness that was long before the dark of night, and a strangely shining light that owed nothing to the light of day. And then goes into verse 3. Another disembodied voice comes in. That day may seems like one day's. Once more we feel the tiny-legged trepidation. Once more we are mangled by a great grinding fear. But that day will have no others. After, no more worlds like this will follow, because I have a plan. A very special plan. No more words like this. No more days like that. And then from this point, another disembodied voice comes in with rising angelic hymns with drones. So the intensity of this particular project is starting to make way. Verse 4, there are but 4 ways to die. A sardonic spirit might have said to me, there is dying that occurs relatively suddenly, there is dying that occurs relatively gradually, there is dying that occurs relatively painlessly. There is the death that is full of pain, thus by various means that are combined, the sudden and the gradual, the painless and the painful. To yield but 4 ways to die, and there are no others. Even after the voice stopped speaking, I listened for it to speak again. After hours and day and years had passed, I listened for some further words, all I heard were the faintest echoes reminding me there are no others, there are no others. Was it then that I began to conceive for this world a special plan? And then louder and other drone sounds. So pretty much at this point, it everything is it continues to play. So the disembodied voices, the hymns, the drone sounds, it kind of starts getting a bit louder, creating more intense atmosphere for what's being said in this poem. Verse 5, there are no means for escaping this world. It penetrates even into your sleep and is its substance. You are caught in your own dreaming, where there is no space, and are held forever where there is no time. You can do nothing you are not told to do. There is no hope for escape from this dream. That was never yours. The very words you speak are only its very words, and you talk like a traitor, under its incessant torture. So again, disembodied voice cuts in at the last part, and then David's words start to be slightly drowned out by the drone. So from this point on, like, the continuations of the disembodied voices and the drones, like, they kind of continue with David speaking in, like, with this poem. And at this point of like the experience, there is a more heavier atmosphere, very dramatic. Even though it's like pretty much sticking with these particular elements, it still makes the biggest difference in making this whole poem that he's reading like much more poignant. Verse 6, There are many who have designs upon this world and dream of wild and vast reformation. I have heard them talking in their sleep of elegant mutation and cunning annihilation. I have heard them whispering in the corners of cricket houses and in the alleys and narrow back streets of this crooked creaking universe, which they, with their new designs, would make straight and sound, but each of these new and ill-conceived designs is deranged in its heart, for they see this world as if it were alone and original, and not as only one of countless others, whose nightmares are proceed like a hideous garden grown from a single seed. I have heard these dreamers talking in their sleep, and I stand waiting for them, as at the top of a darkened flight of stairs. They know nothing of me, and none of the secrets of my special plan, while I know every crooked creaking step of theirs. Verse 7. It was the voice of someone who was waiting in the shadows, who was looking at the moon and waiting for me to turn the corner and enter a narrow street and stand with him in the dull glaze of moonlight. Then he said to me, he whispered, that my plan was misconceived, that my special plan for this world was a terrible mistake, because he said, there is nothing to do and there is nowhere to go. There is nothing to be and there is no one to know. Your plan is a mistake, he repeated. This world is a mistake, I replied. Disembodied voices, drones stop and fade. Slight toy bells start playing. So at this point, we're getting closer to the end, and things kind of calms down after like that big climax. What I would say was what I previously was reading. The children always followed him when they saw him hopping by. A funny walk, a funny man, a funny man. He made them laugh. Sometimes he made them laugh. Oh yes, he did. Oh, how he made them roll. Oh, one day he took them to a place he knew, a special place, and told them things about this world, this funny world, which made them laugh sometimes. He made them laugh. Oh yes, he did. Oh, how he made them roll. Then the funny little man who made them laugh, sometimes he did, revealed to them his special plan, his very special funny plan, knowing they would understand and maybe laugh sometimes. He made them laugh. Oh yes, he did. Their eyes grew wide beneath their lids, and how he made them roll. Disembodied voices comes back along with hymns and drones, so it's starting to like get back to a more level space where we probably heard it begin in. Verse 9, I first learned the fact from a lunatic in a dark and quiet room that smelled of stale time and space. There are no people, nothing at all like that. The human phenomenons, but the sum of densely coiled layers of illusion, each of which winds itself upon the supreme insanity that there are persons of any kind when all there can be is mindless mirrors laughing and screaming as they parade about in an endless dream. But when I asked the lunatic what it was that saw itself within these mirrors as they marched endlessly in stale time and space, he only rocked and smiled. Then he laughed and screamed. In his black and empty eyes I saw for a moment, as in a mirror, a formless shade of divinity, a flight from his stale infinity, all time and space, and the worst of all of this world's dreams, my special plan for the laughter and the screams. Disembodied voices persist and continues on into the next verse. Verse 10, we went to see some little show that was staged in an old shed past the edge of town, and in its beginning all seemed well. The miniature curtain stage glowed in the darkness, while those dolls bounced along on their string before our eyes, and in the beginnings all seemed well, but then there came a subtle turning point, which some had noticed, and I was one who quietly left the show. No, I did not, because I could see where things were going. As the antics of those dolls grew strange, and the fragile strings grew taut with the tiny pullings of tiny limbs. The others around me became appalled and turned away and abandoned the show that was staged in an old shed past the edge of town, but I wanted to witness what could never be. I wanted to see what could not be seen, but the moment of consummate disaster when puppets turn to face the puppet master. Disembodied voices continue. Verse 11, it was twilight, and I stood in the grayish haze of a vast empty building when the silence was enriched by a reverent voice. All the things of this world, it said, are of but one essence, for which there are no words. This is the greater part which has no beginning or end. And the one essence of this world for which there can be no words is but all the things of this world. This is the lesser part which had a beginning and shall have an end, and for which words were conceived solely to speak of. The tiny broken beings of this world, it said. The beginnings and endings of this world, it said. For which words were conceived solely to speak of. Now remove these words, and what remains? It asked me as I stood in the twilight of the vast empty building, but I did not answer. The question echoed over and over, and I remained silent until the echoes died. And as twilight passed into evening, I felt my special plan, for which there are no words, moving towards a greater darkness. Disembodied voices start again, and yeah, I think there's 2 more verses after that. I'm getting so tired of reading, I'm not gonna lie. There are some who have no voices or none that will ever speak because of the things they know about this world and the things they feel about this world, because the thoughts that fill a brain that is a damaged brain, because the pain that fills a body that is a damaged body exists in other worlds, countless other worlds, each of which stand alone in an infinite empty blackness for which no words have been conceived, and where no voices are able to speak. When a brain is filled only with damaged thoughts, when a damaged body is filled only with pain, this stands alone in a world surrounded by infinite empty blackness and exists in a world for which there is no special plan. New reverberating drone persists. David's words are slowed down, repeating the beginning verse. Verse 13, when everyone you have ever loved is finally gone, when everyone you have ever loved is finally gone, when everything you have ever wanted is finally done with, and all of your nightmares are for a time obscured, as by a shining brainless beacon or a blinding eclipse of the many terrible shapes of this world, when you are calm and joyful and finally entirely alone, then in a great new darkness you will finally execute your special plan, when everyone you have ever loved is finally gone, when everything you have ever wanted is finally done with, when all of your nightmares are for a time obscured, as by a shining brainless beacon or a blinding eclipse of the many terrible shapes of this world, when you are calm and joyful and finally entirely alone, then in a great new darkness